out at a gym in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. For many here, though, the goal is more than keeping fit. They're out to change the way they look, using heavy weights to sculpt every muscle in their bodies. Bodybuilding is relatively new to Kenya, but here increasing numbers are taking up the sport. In Nairobi alone, there are close to 150 active bodybuilders. Men who spend almost all their time pumping iron to create a physique that will allow them to take part in competition. For some, the hard work pays off. 20-year-old James Busolo is one of the current African junior champions, a title that took him to the Czech capital Prague for last year's 50th Mr. Universe competition.
I never did well, but at least I was the youngest. I was the youngest to the sport. But they really encouraged me. I knew I had potential. So I have to come back and train back here.
Vitalis Okoth is another local champion. Despite his competitive successes, he's a keen advocate of the sport for other reasons.
We all need weight training to be a little bit stronger for life. And when you are strong in life, when you are strong in your body, you are also strong, in your mind. The way you deal with people, the way you interact with people, treat them with more respect.
In the West, bodybuilding has attracted large numbers of women. There are separate competitions for them. In Africa, though, it has yet to catch on in quite the same way. Laura Ngay, a trainer at a local hotel health club, is one of the few Kenyan women who promotes female bodybuilding.
Hope for the future would be to have more women compete in the bodybuilding competitions and to have more women in the gyms and to see more women not afraid to pick up the weights to train their bodies, because I know weight training does give a good defined body that most women would like to go for.
Bodybuilding has had a hard time being accepted as a sport, tainted by the fact that drugs are often used to accelerate muscle growth. Gym owner and fitness trainer Michael Ragos is a bodybuilding veteran. He says drugs are used in Kenya, but not as widely as they are in other parts of the world.
In Kenya, for example, we have some boys who are using it. Even though we don't have full proof, but I'm sure there are some people who are taking it, who are using some part of it. It's about 15-20% competitors who are using now.
These illegal drugs used by bodybuilders are called anabolic steroids.
Anabolic steroids have androgenic properties. Normally they are in fact worldwide banned. You don't want such substances being used because there are very many side effects. Some of the side effects of anabolic steroids are liver cancer, stunted growth, and you get acne, there are about 70 to 80 side effects.
Over the counter, though, bodybuilders can buy concentrated glucose and protein products and use them legally to improve their muscle building. But even these are too expensive for many Kenyan bodybuilders, most of whom still have to achieve their goals by sheer hard work. Fixed to the walls of the gym are photographs of the shapes the bodybuilders are aiming for, the kind of look that gave film star Arnold Schwarzenegger the Mr. Universe title 4 years in a row. In competitions, judges look for muscle size, muscle quality as well as shape and proportion. Posing and presentation like this are also taken into consideration. For Kenya's small but growing band of bodybuilders, there's new hope for competition. A national federation has recently been set up and is selecting teams to represent the country at international level.
I would like to put a mark in the world scene so that Africans are not just looked just like runners and footballers. They are also looked as good muscle men, good bodybuilders, and together take the philosophy that we have achieved in Africa of bodybuilding to the rest of the world.
With bodybuilding now accepted as an Olympic sport, the Kenyan big boys have much to look forward to as they work out towards what they hope will be a better and bigger future. Next week on Africa Journal, Frederick Chiluba, Zambia's president, calls for cancellation of external debt. Sakolo, the Ivorian band with the sounds of success. The continent in focus, next week on Africa Journal.
Nchi yetu nchi yetu nchi yetu nchi yetu milima na mabonde.
This week on Africa Journal, Down on the Farm, the storybook helping South African workers know their rights. Looking into the past, the treasures of Ethiopia's walled city of Harar. Shaped by sweat, Kenya's bodybuilders striving for success.
Laborers on a farm in the Cape Province of South Africa. Up to 4 years ago, these, and thousands like them, had no employment rights. They could be dismissed without notice, ejected from their homes, and were often paid in alcohol. That's changed. Shortly before the first all-race elections in 1994, labor laws that applied to other workers were extended to include farm laborers. 4 years later, though, efforts are still being made to ensure farm laborers are aware of their rights. A project set up by the Center for Rural Legal Studies conducts courses for local union leaders.
Well, it is common knowledge in South Africa, farm workers has always been the most exploited workers of all sectors. So what we are doing in here today is trying to educate farm workers about their basic rights and what to do if they have disputes about their rights.
For many farm laborers, though, information about their rights comes from a unique source, this picture story book. To combat poor levels of literacy, photographs and simple cartoon-style words are used to convey basic information.
We tried not to be to make them kind of stiff, serious reading, though the subject would be serious because it affects their lives, the day-to-day lives, but you have to find a lighter way of conveying that message to them.
Real farm laborers were used for the stories, with the cooperation of farmers in favor of the scheme.
The making of the book was quite fun. We had to act certain sequences out, and that helped with communication. So the workers now feel that they know what their rights are. They don't expect more than what they know their rights are, and we can expect more of them. And therefore it's definitely a sounder relationship.
Timo Leroux dismisses allegations that farmers deliberately keep information about workers' rights away from their laborers.
I think it's not a common thing. What maybe happen is that farmers themselves doesn't know what it is, or farmers doesn't want to find out. So the perception therefore can arise that farmers keep it away from workers, but I actually think it's just farmers that are also not informed. And that's why this booklet, I think, is only not for the workers, but for farmers also, because farmers need also to be informed.
Others agree with the view and say it is increasingly evident that farmers themselves believe they also need to be aware of what obligations and rights they have under the labor legislation.
We see that they have realized that, if they have a workforce that is informed, it becomes better to have better relations on the farm, and production is not being hampered by unnecessary strikes and fights amongst themselves. So their attitude is changing. They realize that it's very crucial because the laws are here to stay, and farm workers need to know about the laws, and it only helps them.
Women form a large percentage of workers on farms. Experts say that as a group, they've historically often been treated worse than men, and for them, the book can provide valuable information about what rights they have under the law.
Women experience problems as well, in the sense that there's a lot of discrimination on farms against women. And they're treated, in a sense, their conditions are often less favorable than male workers. They often don't enjoy housing as independent employees. So those are just some of the different problems that farm workers experience on farms.
According to Mukukisi Moy, initial fears that farmers would object to the book proved unfounded.
When they saw that the publications that we produced are in no way inciting their workers to rebel against them, but it's more to say to both of them that the farm workers has got rights, but their rights goes with responsibilities. The same applies to you as the employer. You've also got rights under the legislation, but you also have certain obligations and responsibilities that you have to adhere to.
South Africa's farm laborers, a group of workers learning about their employment rights, thanks to simply told stories in a picture book.
This is Abdullahi Ali Sharif, an Ethiopian man fiercely proud of his culture. He lives within the ancient walls of Harar, a city in the country's eastern region. Abdullahi and the 30,000 inhabitants here are predominantly Muslim, in a country where the majority of people belong to the Ethiopian Orthodox faith. The city is one of the most important Islamic centers in Africa. There are no fewer than 89 mosques within its walls. This one is 800 years old. The city walls were built from stone and mud by one of Harar's most notable rulers, Amir Nur, over 400 years ago, with 5 gates into the city. 2 more, such as this one, were put in at a later date. For centuries, an independent city kingdom, Harar became an integral part of the Ethiopian Empire in 1887, after King Menelik II defeated the emir in power. Harar has its own language, Harari, spoken only within its walls. It was once a major commercial center for East Africa, with trade extending to Egypt, Arabia and India. And like Aksum, another historical Ethiopian city, Harar minted its own coins. Abdullahi has a collection which spans more than 11 centuries, from 729 AD to 1886. It's the largest and most comprehensive collection in the world, totaling over 700 Harari coins.
It was a center of Islamic learning, and it is a center of trade for East Africa, so that it has its own coin. Without coin, there is no trade.
Harar was advanced in other ways too. 2 centuries ago, the city's women were given rights to inherit land, long before women in the West were allowed to do so. Even today, in many countries in Africa and around the world, women still can't inherit land. Abdullahi has the very book containing the declaration.
In 1794 AD, when Amir Muhammad was recognized that the woman have no right to share her parents' wealth, he collects all the people in his office and declares that if you engage her wedding party or anything, women have right to get her parents' property, or she have rights of sharing.
The book is one of several volumes that testify to Harar's long history of bookbinding. Harari literature is primarily Islamic. This Quran from Abdullahi's collection was handwritten over 1200 years ago in 743 AD. Now, unfortunately, Harari binding is a dead art. But other crafts for which it's been famed through the centuries are alive and well: basketry, pottery and silverwork. These older items show Arab and Indian influences harking back to its cosmopolitan past as a trading center. Nowadays, the quality of work may not be as fine, but the tradition continues. 80-year-old Abdul Wahid Haji Muhammad is the most experienced silversmith in Harar. He says circumstances have affected quality. With 36 children from 4 wives to support, it's all a question of economics.
Nowadays, there's no demand for the finer, more expensive items that were produced in the earlier times. It would be too expensive for me to make them as they are for the tourists to buy. So I've been forced to decrease the quality of the products. But I can still make high-quality jewelry.
Harari homes are also unique. This one, which once belonged to a religious judge 360 years ago, is now a museum. Most Harari homes within the city walls are similarly decorated. The main room is constructed on different levels to accommodate people of varying status. Shrines and monuments reflect its long history. This is the shrine to Amir Nur, who gave Harar its walls. This statue of Ras Makonnen, father of Emperor Haile Selassie, was made by Ethiopia's internationally known artist Afewerk Tekle during the emperor's reign. Afewerk also designed these stained glass windows showing some of the rulers of Harar and Aksum. Colorful markets are a feature of the city. They sell all manner of goods, from exotic spices to burners for frankincense. The region is an important center for khat, a narcotic leaf. Sold in its many markets, chewing chat, as it's called in Harar, is part and parcel of life here. Today, the walled city is no longer a center of commerce. Its decline began at the turn of the century, with the building of a railway which bypassed Harar, avoiding the surrounding mountains. The line, which extends from Djibouti to the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa, plays an important part in the Ethiopian economy, carrying much of its imports and exports. The people of Harar hope that one day their city will be declared a World Heritage Site, so that international money may be channeled into its restoration. At present, much of the repair work is being organized locally.
In Harar, if you see the wall, I was the one who repaired it. I collect money and organize some committee.
But Abdullahi also has his own private dream.
I want to make this house or in another place a museum. Mini museum of reading and a mini museum of Hararian going to show for Hararis and the other peoples. So that I didn't sell till now anything. Just I collect. I just keep them like my child. This documents, coins, everything about Harar.
Coming up on Africa Journal, Senegal's artists flourishing with government support. Building bodies, the Kenyans pumping iron to sculpt muscle.